1 second here. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, okay, no problem. I can spin the wheels a moment longer if need be.
No,
Hope.
we're ready to go.
All
Thanks
right.
for holding down the fort. It's been a busy couple of weeks and or months, folks, huh? Thanks so much for everybody taking the time to be here. We'll go ahead and gavel in, and I'll call the meeting to order. Again, as a reminder for folks, the meeting is being recorded, is being webcast live, and there will be an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. And we are going to do our best to stay on our agenda times to be respectful of everybody's very, very busy Friday, getting ready to move into the last week of October. Vice Chair Stabenow, and congratulations on your new appointment as the vice chair of the Science Coordination Group, I believe, right? So
Much
SCG
appreciated.
vice chair and FCRCT vice chair. Would you like to make any opening remarks?
Just thank you all. It's been a long and grueling political season to get through the vote on that one. We are glad to be here this afternoon. I look forward to the presentations we have today. We're trying to make sure we're living up to our standard, which is that we're going to be working to coordinate between those Everglades Restoration Program project initiatives and influences and impacts at the coral reef and bring these efforts together, living up to our name, of course. And so I'm glad to have some of the speakers that we have on board today to help us in that goal. Back to you, Wes.
Great, thank you. I'd also like to just point out everybody on the call should now have been alerted to the introduction of two new team members for us, both Samantha Cook and Alessandra Spence are replacing Alan Childress, and we are really grateful for Alan's help over the last almost 2 years now that we've been running this, but we're really excited to work with both Sam and Alessandra in keeping this this train moving on down the track. So if any members have follow-on needs at all, feel free to reach out directly to them, and they'll loop Eric and I in as needed on things as well. So thank you both for being here. I also just want to give a quick shout out to Adam and the OERI team for making that that works so well for us, and we didn't miss a beat on that end. So thank you very much for that. At this point, I'll maybe Alessandra, maybe you can introduce yourself really quickly, and then we'll let Sam introduce herself and take on the rest of the meeting.
Okay, hey guys, great to be here. I'm Alessandra Spence. I'm an MBA and I work for Adam, and I'm very happy to be here learning about listening to the science. I'm going to be the coordinator for the meeting, and I'll let Sam introduce herself and talk a little bit about her role. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces and names. My name is Sam Cook. I'm the program manager at the National Coral Reef Institute based out of Nova Southeastern University. I've been on the outskirts of this team for a very long time, I think since it came on board. So it's very exciting to work with you all in a more official capacity. Like Wes said, if you have any questions or concerns about anything going on, feel free to reach out to myself or Alessandra. Should have gotten a number of emails from us already, I do believe. So with that, I am going to go ahead and share my screen and quickly go over the meeting procedures before we go into the whip around and give updates. So, 1 second. Okay, you should be able to see my screen. So for meeting procedures, everybody made it here, so that's a good first step. So welcome to the conversation. Today's meeting is a Zoom webinar. It'll also be webcast live on our YouTube channel, and it is being recorded. So that will be on the FCRCT webpage sometime early next week. Along with that, we'll also have transcripts of everything that's discussed. Please note that everybody has been automatically muted when you join, and attendees are in listen-only mode. If you join as a panelist or as an FCRCT member, you should be able to come off mute. Please, though, if you do come off mute, use the raise hand function first, just so we can prevent anyone talking over anyone else. For FCRCT members, please identify yourselves when speaking, just for the ease of note-taking. And then at the end of the meeting, we will have a time for public comment. Comments are going to be provided at the end. And if you do want to provide a comment, just use the raise hand feature. Please do not use your raise hand feature as an attendee until the public comment period has been announced. Public comments will have 3 minutes. For the materials, like I said, the recording of the webinar will be on the FCRCT webpage early next week. Right now, all of the presentations and meeting materials should already be uploaded and hyperlinked on that page. And we'll go through and make sure if anything else has been added, all of that will be up early next week as well. There's a link that we can provide to you all via email afterwards, but also welcome to write it down. It's EvergladesRestoration.gov /FCRCT. If you want to get any information between the meetings, there is an area for you to sign up for meeting notices. You're also welcome to just send me an email and I can make sure that information gets passed along to you. So that's all I have for meeting procedures. With that, I am going to go ahead and actually, I believe, hand it back to Wes for us to go through the roster and ask members to give updates.
Thank you so much, Sam. So just as a reminder, as we go through the roster and give everybody a chance to speak and represent their organization and just provide some thoughts, funding opportunities that other agencies and other folks watching should be attuned to would be great to know. And also, you know, with all of the with everything going on with the weather and hurricanes and things like that, it would be really great to get a little bit of information on the resource condition for the areas that you oversee, especially after last year's heavy bleaching event. Curious to hear what people are seeing in the water in their areas. So with that, and I'm just going to roll down our list here. So that starts out with our voting members and Chris Eggleston.
Hello, folks. My name is Chris Eggleston. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at the Florida Keys Refuge Complex. My office is located on Big Pine Key. Also on the call today is our refuge biologist, Dr. Heather Stewart. Our complex consists of 4 refuges, 3 of which are located in the lower Florida Keys, including National Key Deer, Great White Heron, and Key West National Wildlife Refuges. And then our 4th one is located in the Upper Keys on Key Largo, and that's called Crocodile Lake. At our refuge complex, we focus mostly on terrestrial, wetland, and mangrove habitats, but we do co-manage inshore habitats with FWC and the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. Thanks for having us. We're excited to be here and be part of the group. I don't have much in-water updates to give you. However, the last few storms or last couple of storms have eroded some of our islands down in the Key West Refuge a fair amount, but not as bad as last year. So we're not in terrible shape. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And I will take not as bad as last year across the board if we can get it. Next, we're going to go to Sarah. And I just want to say, first and foremost, on behalf of, I think, everybody here from the FCRCT team, as well as the OERI team, and anybody that knows you well, this will be your last FCRCT meeting. And we're so very grateful for the years that you have invested at the sanctuary. Personally, you know, I consider you a dear friend, And I appreciate all the conversations we've had and all the work that we've done over many years together. And I wouldn't say you're on to better things over on the West Coast of the U.S., but I know that you're going to continue doing big things and great things for the communities that you're serving. So sorry to get you all emotional here before I pass it over to you, but I just wanted you to know that, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. I appreciate that very much. It is indeed my final meeting. For those of you not aware, I am moving to the West Coast. I'm staying in the NOAA family, in the National Marine Sanctuaries family. I will be the West Coast Regional Director, so overseeing the sanctuaries on the West Coast of the United States. I leave the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary with a very, very heavy heart. It has been such an honor and a privilege to serve in this role, and I will be fighting for the Florida Keys from this new position. Even though I will be geographically a ways away, I will still be fighting for this place. So you can't make me stop. And I leave the sanctuary in good hands. Currently acting in the position is Matt Stout. He is the Chief of Staff for the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And so also very knowledgeable about sanctuaries, not as knowledgeable about our reefs, which is why I have asked Jennifer Moore to step into this role in the interim while the hiring process is underway for a replacement permanent superintendent. Jennifer Moore joined the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary fairly recently in the last few months. She is serving as a senior manager for Mission Iconic Reefs. Some of you may know her name in her role previous to that. She was with NOAA Fisheries and worked on a lot of coral issues. So probably many of you have worked with Jennifer. So she will be joining you in the next meeting in my seat. And then, as I noted, there will be a hiring action. Hopefully you will hear very soon the opening. I hope you will help spread the vacancy announcement far and wide. There is not an heir apparent. There's nobody selected. Sometimes people think, oh, they got somebody in mind. There is not. So it is a truly open competition. And I of course, hope that some really fantastic candidates will apply and someone will be selected soon to carry forward the important work here. So that enough on that. Real quickly, you asked Wes about impacts from storms. We are feeling very, very grateful down here in the Keys with regard to the impacts. We know that other areas in our state suffered much, much more significantly in every way than we did. One thing I will note is some of you know we have about 800 buoys here in the Florida Keys that are used for marking and mooring to protect the reefs and the seafloor. And unfortunately, we did lose over 50 buoys by the two storms. So we are working to get those back out. But from the natural resource side, I think we got lucky. From the human side, we got lucky, but we did lose some buoys. And if you find a buoy on your beach, give us a call. We'll try to collect it. Thank you. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm sure we'll be in touch, and we'll try to keep these meetings in the afternoon to allow you to check in from where you'll be. Up next, Wade Lehman from EPA.
There we go. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. I don't have a whole lot in the way of reporting. I will let you know EPA was involved with the emergency response from both hurricanes, but we're focused primarily on drinking water and getting septic or sewerage back online. So that's going well. It sounds like it's rounding down, which is great. I think our mobile lab is still out there and in place. But all of that is obviously a little north of the Keys. So I don't think it's too terribly relevant here. The other item I wanted to put out there is we're currently processing our most recent round of grant applications, the proposals that we received. I think we received about 53 proposals this year. We have somewhere around the order of a little over $9 million to disperse. I expect they probably won't be notified until the beginning of 2025 for those. I will say that in that package, I believe we have 4 that are directly relevant to the coral, Florida's coral reef, and a few more that are indirectly relevant since they're water quality. And I think that's it for updates from EPA. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Wade. Gil McCrae, you've had a couple interesting weeks. Glad to see you have power.
Yes, we do have staff that are at work primarily to enjoy the benefits of air conditioning. So, excuse me. So yeah, thanks, Wes. It's good to be with you all. So I'm Gil McRae, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. I'm the director of our Florida Fish and Wildlife Research Institute. We did get a number of staff that were impacted by the hurricane, including some that work in our coral reef research and monitoring program. And because of that, they're busy attending to personal needs. And but once they get back out in the field, we'll have some more real-time information on conditions. But in general, I think the mantra "better than last year" holds, even given the storms. So very happy that this group is hitting the ground running. I am, like Eric, also on the science coordination group, and like Wade, I'm a member of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary Water Quality Protection Program steering committee. So I think that as a member of these groups for many years, this coordination team is going to play a vital role in connecting groups that really needed to be connected some time ago. We know we have challenges with our coral reefs and our coral ecosystem, and we're going to need all the help we can get. So looking forward to today's presentations and helping this group be successful in the long term.
Thanks, Gil, and appreciate all the work you and your staff are doing with your own personal situations there in St. Petersburg. Next on our list is Alex Reed. I don't think she's able to join us, so we're gonna move on to CJ Sweetman. How you doing, CJ?
Good. How are you, Wes? My name's CJ Sweetman. I also work with FWC. I work on the Federal Fisheries Section Leader for FWC's Division Marine Fisheries Management. I'm located down here in the Keys. I'm kind of more on the side of the fish side of things and invertebrate side of things. However, corals fall in that realm too. So it's another part of my job here, mainly focusing on the management as well as permitting and things like that, as far as restoration and relocation activities go for corals and many other species. Relative to the storm impacts, certainly, deferring to some of our research scientists that are on this call here for what they're seeing in the water. On the fishery side of things, yes, certainly a lot of major impacts to a lot of fishermen up in that neck of the woods there where Helene and Milton were direct impacts. However, just based on the path of the storm that we saw, for both of them, quite frankly, it does have the ability to move some traps around for lobster and stone crab and stuff like that. Luckily, stone crab season hadn't started quite yet when we knew that the storm was coming for as far as Milton goes. But we did have traps in the water for Helene, for the lobster fishery. And we have heard about some impacts, even though it wasn't a direct hit to South Florida or anything like that. If you have sustained winds of about 40 miles an hour, they can have an effect in moving traps around. And obviously that is a concern relative to our coral reefs and our sensitive benthic habitat. So we regularly do trap retrieval programs in the state of Florida here, trying to collect derelict traps and everything along those lines. So they're not impacting the reefs, they're not impacting our other marine resources through ghost fishing and whatnot. So we're going to work with our folks now that these storms are kind of through. I'm giving knock on wood here that November is a little lighter than it was this last month. But we will keep you posted on that, and we're just going to work to get some of those traps out of the water that could be potentially all tangled up and impacting our sensitive benthic habitat. Back to you, Wes.
Thanks, CJ. Next up, we have Dave Whiting, our water quality guru from Tallahassee.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Dave Whiting. I'm a deputy division director in our Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration, and I'm the deputy over our laboratory programs and our water quality standard programs. As far as the storms go, we got all our storm damage out of the way back in May when we had 3 tornadoes come through town. We did not suffer any outages or any complications from either Helene or Milton. So we're up and running, good to go. That's all I got, Wes.
Great. Thanks for being here, Dave.
Yep.
And then our last voting member on with us, Dana.
Hey, thanks, Wes. Hey, everyone. Sorry, I'm having some camera challenges today, so I'm going to keep it off for the most part. But I did have one opportunity that I wanted to share on behalf of NOAA and NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program. And it's an important opportunity. So we've been working with our federal partners on the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force, as well as the 7 states and territories that participate in that body, to develop a draft of the National Coral Reef Resilience Strategy. That strategy has a 15-year timeline, so 2025 to 2040. It's going to take the place of NOAA Coral Reef Conservation Program's current strategic plan, and really dramatically expand in scope, in that it's not just doesn't just focus on NOAA's roles and responsibilities at the national level when it comes to coral reef conservation, but of all of the relevant federal agencies that work on coral reef conservation. So that draft strategy is out as of October 11th. It was published as a Federal Register notice. And there's a 45-day public comment period open right now. I will share the link information so that it can be included in the notes. But we really hope that if you haven't already, that folks take the time to look in there and make sure the things that you think we need to be supporting at the national level, relevant to coral reef conservation, are that you see those in there, that they're included. And provide your feedback on what you do see in there and how you think that translates to action on the ground and support for all of the important work that we're all doing here in Florida. So would really appreciate your input and insights on the strategy. Again, it is a 45-day comment period that opened on October 11th. So that closes on November 25th. And I will provide the link. And if folks have any questions as they dig through the strategy, feel free to reach out. And if I can't answer your questions, I can definitely connect you with the folks who can. So that's it for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Dana. And definitely get that link to us, and we'll make sure that it's incorporated into the meeting notes and made readily available to everybody here. Heading into our non-voting membership, Cassandra with the Water Management District.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Applied Sciences Bureau Chief at the South Florida Water Management District. We just stood down yesterday from our EOC activities from the hurricane. We've got a lot of fresh water still in the system, but it's slowly moving through, and hopefully the longer duration will minimize any impact to salinity into the estuaries. We did lose our sensor sondes in the Caloosahatchee all the way up to S79. So we're in the process of putting those sensors back in and getting them back online. So we have a little bit of a loss of data for the Caloosahatchee. But other than that, we actually fared pretty well, thank goodness. Minimal impact to our infrastructure. We did have some really scary tornadoes coming through, but we were fortunate in that there was minimal damage to the STAs, to the water conservation areas, and to people's homes. So we were very fortunate there. So, and that's all I have to report.
Thanks, Cassandra. Next up, Angela Delaney with Broward County.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to give a quick update with what Broward County is doing. I'm Angela Delaney. I'm the Marine Resources Program Manager here at the county. Our staff are continuing to participate in the disturbance response monitoring, which is part of a larger region-wide effort from other agencies and academic institutions and other counties and municipalities that go out onto our reefs, examine disturbance, meaning bleaching impacts and disease, Right now, we don't have a tally yet of bleaching prevalence in the county because we're still doing the monitoring. However, just a visual assessment of us being down there on our sites, we have seen some paling of colonies, partial bleaching, and some full bleaching, but nothing out of the ordinary that we've seen in the past. Nothing like that was reported last year down in the Keys, at least offshore of our beaches. But we do have some bleach colonies. Temperatures kind of range between 86 and 87 degree Fahrenheit during the summer, but thankfully they are starting to cool down a little bit, which is fortunate. We're also continuing to do or collect data for the NCRIMP surveys, which is the NOAA National Coral Reef Monitoring Program. And again, those sites are very similar to our disturbance response monitoring sites where we're seeing bleaching here and there, but nothing extremely prevalent like was reported last year down in the Keys. We're very fortunate here in Broward County to not have suffered major impacts locally from the hurricanes. We did have a few tornadoes touch down in the county as well, but from a natural resource perspective, I think we fared pretty well. And then also we're finalizing in the county our 5-year review and update to the county's climate change action plan. So that's pretty exciting that that's coming to an end as well. And that's all the updates I have. Oh, in addition, sorry, not so much at our county, but I do know that there has been reports of a Caulerpa racemosa, which is a mat, well, not a mat type algae, but a macroalgae that kind of exploded down in Miami-Dade County at some sites where it's covering percent cover wise areas where it's kind of blocking out light to coral colonies and covering up sponges and stuff. So I know that that's been an issue down in Miami-Dade County. I think they've had a few sites in Broward County that has that same explosion in percent cover of that species. So just a heads up with that.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate it. Deb Drum, Palm Beach County.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for including us. My name is Deb Drum. I'm the Department Director of Environmental Resources Management here in Palm Beach County. We were not as fortunate. We were more fortunate than other areas of the state, but we did get quite a bit of tornado activity here that's created some of our EOC activity. We did have some of those tornadoes touch down in our natural areas, but they were sort of designed to withstand natural disasters. And as far as our reefs go, visibility is about as bad as it can get right now, but I think that that's not unique to us. I think a lot of people are experiencing that. We have had some excessive water releases and a lot of the wind and wave energy. Our beaches did pretty good through the storm, but all the conditions, the really windy and wave action conditions that occurred in the last week or so has taken that slightly deflated beach from the storms and then created some hot spots where we've got like 3 areas in the county that we're looking at potentially looking at FEMA assistance with. So otherwise we're doing fine and it's great to see everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Deb. Next, we'll go to Laura Eldridge to give Miami-Dade County's update on the algal blooms and everything else you want to talk about, Laura.
Jumping right in there, right, Wes? Yeah, and thanks, Angela, for kind of bringing that up. As far as the storm goes, of course, we just had some winds down here, to be honest, and localized flooding. So we're very thankful. We just had some canceled field days as we were really trying to finalize out some of that seasonal survey work that we were conducting at the time. But yeah, to jump into the Caulerpa racemosa, and thanks for Angela for bringing it up. So if our identification is correct, this is typically a native species that we see in this area. However, some of these algal species can have these ephemeral bloom conditions. So we've been working very strongly with our partners, particularly Nova Southeastern University, Florida National University, FIU, DEP, University of Miami, and University of Florida being our primary partners in the discussions. We have conducted collections, so we are trying to work with FIU researchers to get confirmation on the species because they are worried that they really want to kind of make their, keep their due diligence and ensure that we've ruled out the fact that it might not be something invasive or some sort of exotic strain of this particular species. But our surveyors have really been noticing from around Key Biscayne all the way north. And I believe NOVA actually did find one site in Broward County as well, but we are seeing, almost like smothering conditions at this point. So a lot of concern. Dr. Walker's been really great from NOVA on leading and pulling a lot of the reports together to create a map and keeping that updated. So if anyone's interested, we have a map that he generated as of, I believe, about 3 days ago is the most recent update. DEP's also been really helpful. We've been leaning into their CFAN reporting process to collect a lot of reports and having that centralized location to document those sightings. Another thing we've been noticing more recently too is, of course, as we're seeing this very thick mat of what we're calling Clerpa racemosa, we're seeing other algal species attaching to that as well. So additional concerns that we have. At this point, we're basically just collecting presence and absence data information based on known survey sites. But there have been a couple kind of reconnaissance surveys, namely out of NOVA, and they did one linear 500-meter survey, and they did see almost complete coverage, 100% coverage along 500 meters. So that's pretty significant. We're seeing a lot of the extent, around Miami Beach, off Miami Beach, all the way up kind of through Surfside in that area. So just thankful for all of our partners working together and everybody communicating on what they're seeing, and we'll continue to update everyone as we find out more.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Ian Enix from NOAA.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Got you loud and clear.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll keep this brief. I'm the lead of the coral program at the Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory. I'm happy to report that we are out of thermal stress in South Florida and in the Keys. And the summer really was a story of storms driving these high temperatures down. Our instrumentation really shows that we were really, from a thermal perspective, locked out by those storms. At every time the temperature went up, we seemed to get one of these storms and knocked it back down. We are much more fortunate in that respect than Puerto Rico and a lot of other places throughout the Caribbean, which are experiencing extreme thermal stress and bleaching. So that is something to be thankful for.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Elizabeth Kelly, Martin County.
Hi, thank you for having us be here. I work with the Environmental Resource Division at Martin County in our Public Works Department. A lot of what my work focuses on is water quality. Some of the concerns we've been having lately has been, of course, due to the storm. We did have a few tornadoes come through here, so they did affect people's homes. They did affect our natural areas. Did pretty well. We did get out and do assessment pretty much a couple days after, because the storm kind of rolled through, and we were able to go out and assess. And our areas did do pretty well. Obviously the cleanup continues with people's homes. We also ended up there was so much trash deposited on the beach. We found insulation and other foam things associated, probably blown there by tornadoes. So we did have a beach cleanup. We were a couple of them actually, to go and try to help do what we could do to clean some of that off of there. Obviously at the same time, some of the concerns that we're having tied in having this debris around. We've been having a lot of rain. There have been releases. Our basin, of course, like it's been said, has gone through some high water due to king tides and just the rain we've been getting along with the storms. So we've been trying to monitor the salinity levels, which are certainly lower than they should be. They are affecting, it's in the stressful or harmful range for seagrass and for oysters. And obviously, as we're not following coral like we should be, that is probably also causing them stress as well. So we have a whole bunch of things occurring at the same time with the debris and the high water and the king tides. We haven't seemed to have a lot of cyanobacteria spikes, not a lot of enterococci. So that part has gone pretty well. But basically with what we have, we've just been trying to move forward with our plans to do our water quality monitoring programs. We're picking up sites where we see we might be impaired, working to move forward on some possible work with our corals as well. So that's where we are now, and just trying to keep moving forward and fix what we need to fix, what still needs help from the storm. That's where we are right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Next up, Chris Kellogg from USGS. Chris, how was your expedition?
Pretty good, although to be fair, because I'm in St. Petersburg, the last 2 months were sort of a blur of what's been going on. So I'm a senior scientist at USGS representing both our Coastal and Marine Hazards Resources Program and also our Ecosystems Mission Area, because they do coral research from different angles. Yes, being here in St. Pete, we experienced a lot. There are people in my office whose houses were flooded or had trees fall on them and whatnot. A large sector of my office is devoted to coastal change hazards. And so they were insanely busy during all of this. And I will just tell you, it's incredibly disconcerting to watch them attach some of their wave run-up sensors in the parking lot right outside the door to your building. But fortunately, we did not have the storm surge that we thought we might get. And so that didn't actually end up being useful to them. But they were, had sensors all along some of the local beaches and were collecting data during all of the storms. I'm fortunate that I will be evacuating Florida next week. I was invited to a small meeting in Mexico put on by CORDAP, which is the Coral Research and Development Accelerator Platform. They're convening a handful of experts internationally to talk about and develop priorities, research priorities for coral disease work going forward. And so we will spend next week figuring that out. And then also one of our researchers, Kim Yates, let me know that she had a paper published recently she thought people might be interested in about the impact of Hurricane Irma on coral reef sediment distribution in Looe Key. And then also has, I think, 4 different underwater photogrammetry products, again, all from places in the Florida Keys that have recently come out. And so I was going to send links to all of that to Sam Cook so she would have them available for everybody.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope between all your travel and work and the hurricanes, things are slowing down for you just a little bit. Next up, Shelley Kruger for Monroe County.
Thank you. Yes, I represent Monroe County. I am extension faculty at the University of Florida and the Florida Sea Grant agent in Monroe County. And I don't have anything to report because I unfortunately have not been in the water since July. So everybody else pretty much covered what's going on in the Keys pretty well. So thank you for the invitation today.
Thanks for being here. Gina Ralph with the Army Corps.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Gina Ralph with the Army Corps of Engineers. Some things that have been going on recently here. I know we have Tim Geisen, who's going to give an overview of LOSOM. It's our Lake Okeechobee System Operations Manual, how we control releases from Lake Okeechobee and how those releases are managed. We are also working on our plan for the Central Everglades project. We recently held a public meeting to provide a biannual construction update. And with that, we give a real brief overview of our operational plan. So once we build something, we have to operate it, and we need a system operations manual. So we're currently working on that, and that will affect flows through the from the Everglades agricultural area all the way down through the water conservation areas to Everglades National Park, Florida Bay, and Biscayne Bay. Our Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades Restoration Project, I wish I had news that we are moving forward. However, it is on a slight hold while we request additional resources from our headquarters. So more to come on that, but once we are up and running, we do have a tentatively selected plan that can be shared, and we will then go into development of refinements and adaptive management and monitoring. We will have a full project update next week on October 30th at the Working Group Science Coordination Group meeting. So hopefully some of you will tune in for that. And then finally, the big news from the Restoration Coordination Verification Front, or RECOVER. Our 2024 system status report is currently out for public review. It will give you a snapshot of the system in a comparison to a baseline. We've been collecting data for a very long time now, and you will see a snapshot in time from 2018 to present of where our indicators are as a result of SERP and non-SERP restoration efforts. So I will put that information in the chat, and I hope you all will navigate to the RECOVER website and take a look. The final report will be available on December 6th. So all comments are welcome, and there is an email address that I will also place in the chat where you can provide your comments. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Ralph, very much. I see that Alex Reed has been able to join us. I think her Zoom software has been acting up. Alex, you have anything that you'd like to add from your DEP seat?
Hey there. Sorry to be having such difficulty, but glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, Wes. Just a couple of things for storm response. We've been looking at a storm recovery plan this will mainly focus on the beaches throughout the state that were impacted by the recent storms. We've done some detailed damage assessments using some helicopter videography that we collected post-storm. We'll be drafting a detailed damage assessment report in the impacted areas, and hopefully be drafting a recovery plan, which will detail the funding needed to restore the beaches that were impacted by these storms. And this will be provided to the legislature for funding consideration during next session or special session if that is called for. So help to get our beach communities back on track with restoration, because they're such a huge economic driver for the state. We also, in the Florida's Coral Reef Restoration and Recovery Program, we are looking through the applications that we received for our grant program. We received $9.5 million, and we received over $25 million in applications. So obviously a lot of effort to weed through those applications and make sure that we're growing the program for our partners who are building out capacity to house and propagate, or to house and grow our baby corals out for restoration efforts, and working with our partners who are building that curriculum to develop those practitioners for restoration moving forward, and help us get the reef-wide restoration moving in the right direction in the years to come. And then the last thing to tell you about is, I know that we've missed having Joanna Welzak work with this team, and we are working on advertising to fill her position with the Coral Protection and Restoration Program. So looking forward to bringing on new expertise in the future. And those are updates from our program. Thank you, Wes.
Thanks, Alex. And I just want to point out some dedication from Alex. Alex, when did you move into that office?
Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection?
No, your current office that you're sitting in right now, physically.
Oh, little over a year ago, maybe.
Okay, so this is a dedicated civil servant who hasn't even taken the time to unbox her stuff yet. She's been so busy for the state of Florida in Floridians. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you, Alex, for all that you do.
All for you. Thanks.
Last but certainly not least, I want to give OERI's executive director an opportunity to speak and share what he's got going on. And I know it's been very busy, Adam. And again, really appreciate everything you've been doing for this team. Floor is yours.
Yeah, no, looking forward to continuing on this mission, and the water quality being important, right? And all the work that you all do and dedicate to this. We're seeing great products coming out of the invasive species team, and some real hard data to prioritize invasive species. And the same is going to be happening from here. I'm not sure, maybe I missed that, walked away for a minute for meetings next week. Did you cover those, Wes? Okay, I take that as a no, but we have the IDS, the Integrated Delivery Schedule meeting next Tuesday, and the working group and SCG meeting on Wednesday. They have virtual opportunities. We really, encourage participation in that. It helps kind of round out how things are working here and update. And then looking forward to task force in Washington, D.C. in December. So look forward to the rest of the meeting, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you again to your team for everything you do to support this group. All right, we are going to move into our meeting summary approval. I believe Sam and Alessandra sent meeting notes from our July meeting around to everybody. I'll give anybody a second. If they hadn't provided any comments for that and would like to do so, feel free to raise a hand and note those now. All right, seeing no comments, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to move that forward for approval.
So move, Mr. Chair.
And do we have a second? Thank you, CJ.
They're all being so kind. I'll second that. I think I can.
Hey, thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate the second. So the way we will do this, since we're all virtual, is I will ask anyone opposed to approval of the minutes from the July meeting to use the raise their hand feature now. Give everybody a few seconds to access that. Okay, I'm seeing no hands raised, so we'll count that as unanimous approval of the meeting minutes. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the first of two presentations today. The first is, as Dr. Ralph mentioned, on the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual, and an overview of a really important part of the hydrological system here in the state of Florida over the last couple of decades and probably for many, many decades to come. And I also just want to note, we spend a lot of time in this team focusing on the very shallow areas of the coral reef system, especially further south. But this operations manual is really critical to some of the reefs, especially at the northern end of the reef system in Martin and Palm Beach counties in particular. Though there are impacts further down in Broward, Miami-Dade, and arguably even the Keys. So at this point in time, I'll introduce Tim Geisen from the Army Corps of Engineers. He is the Resilience Senior Project Manager for the Jacksonville District. And so he and I cross paths quite a bit in our responsibilities. And you single-handedly sort of managed and directed the public process related to the development of the LOSOM. Did you not, Tim?
I'll take credit for it, but no, it was really a huge team effort. It required a lot of people to coordinate with as many stakeholders as we had interested in that.
But you got stuck being the face of it, sir. So
I did. It was
you deserve some credit.
I appreciate it.
I'll turn it over to you, Tim. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Do you want me to share my screen for the presentation? Is that the easiest way to do it?
I'll leave that to our logistics folks.
Yep, you should have permission to share down at the bottom.
Okay, great. All right. All right, everybody seeing the presentation? Okay, great. All right, so a quick overview. I know Wes just introduced me, but for this, if you don't know me, my name is Tim Geisen. I've been with the Corps for 24 years as an engineer, and most recently, the last 8 years as a project manager. Did run the LOSOM effort, and now I've kind of moved on into more overall system resilience, which includes water management, because water management does tie together all of our projects, whether they be federal, state, or local projects, the water management system really ties everything together. So operations is extremely important. And for those of you who have been paying attention to the IDS, you'll notice there's a lot of operational planning efforts that have made their way on there, as that is going to be a really important focus for Everglades restoration as well moving forward. So I'm going to give you a little overview of LOSOM today, and then kind of talk about our new water management decision process, some of you may have heard and others may have not, but it's kind of a revamping of the way we want to try to do business. And then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. All right, so before I jump into kind of the LOSOM schedule itself, I just want to kind of orient everybody with the system for those of you who may not be involved daily in our operations. The stars that you see on the map here are the structures that lead out of Lake Okeechobee. So these structures are the only outlets from Lake Okeechobee to the rest of the system. Of particular importance on the west coast is S79. That's where we measure all of our flows going into the Caloosahatchee estuary. So if we have high flows from the basin, we're not making releases from the lake. On the east coast, S80 is the important kind of indicator structure. We do release water out of S308, but where we take readings to make sure to look at what's going on the coast is S80. And then to the south, S271 and 352 are the main structures that lead over to the Lake Worth Lagoon, and then down to the greater Everglades through EA and water conservation areas, S351 and 354. So I just want to orient everybody with those. So when I jump to the next slide, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about when I mention particular structures. All right. Just want to kind of quick overview of the schedule and some of the performance benefits that we're seeing based on the modeling that we did during the planning process and that we expect to see as we move into implementation over the next decade. All right, so kind of the highlights of the schedule itself, which you see over here, maybe not as easy to see on this slide, but hopefully you can blow it up on your own screens. You'll notice this big blue area here. That's what we call Zone D, and that's where we're going to spend the majority of time during operations under LOSOM. And then what that really allows us to do is meet this intent, which is not only to achieve synergy with our project purposes, but it really allows us to maximize the benefits of the available water in the system. So it's kind of a big change in our philosophy, if you will, in how we think about water. And it's something we really want to carry over into future efforts as well, is that water is a beneficial resource. It's not just something that we're trying to manage for flood risk to move it out of the system as quickly as possible. Water is a very valuable resource, especially in our state, and we need to treat it as such when we think about water management operations. So that's kind of a big change in the philosophy, is that beneficial use of water in Lake Okeechobee that we can use to benefit other parts of the system. So with that, kind of that first bullet is really to take advantage of the additional storage that the restoration of the Herbert Hoover Dike allows us to do. So that risk reduction measure to reinforce Herbert Hoover Dike really allows us to hold water as we get towards the top parts of the schedule and not make those big volume releases to the coast that can be so damaging. With less risk means we can make decisions to not release and still be in really good shape from a flood risk management perspective up at the top of the schedule. In this Zone D, in the big blue zone, we're eliminating releases to the St. Lucie estuary from Lake Okeechobee under all normal conditions. And to kind of give you an idea of what that means, under our previous schedule LORs, we were only at zero flows 37% of the time. Under LOSOM, based on our modeling, we expect that 95% of the time we'll be making zero releases to the east. Now, again, that doesn't mean there's no water going into the St. Lucie estuary, because there are basin flows, but there won't be lake water being released out to the east. To the west, in this zone, we're only going to be making beneficial releases for the estuary. So that means flows 2,000 CFS or less from S79, so that coastal structure. So again, if there are basin flows, we're not making releases from the lake. We're only making releases when we're able to up to 2000 CFS at S79, that most coastal structure. So really looking at trying to have beneficial flows for both the estuaries. And then Lake Worth Lagoon, I want to highlight because that wasn't previously kind of acknowledged as one of the major estuaries on the East Coast. And under LOSOM, that's changed. So in Zone D, we'll be making 0 releases to the Lake Worth Lagoon under normal conditions. But there are opportunities because the lagoon may need freshwater flows to release up to 300 CFS. And again, a lot of that will be coordinated through our public and agency engagements. We really want to be engaged with the folks who are on the ground, managing the local systems, looking at the best available science to make good decisions with the releases that we do end up making. Really understand how that's affecting those downstream systems, so those estuaries and the reefs. Also want to highlight that just generally overall within the lake, those folks who count on the lake for water supply, we did see generally improvement for all water supply users, including the tribe, the Seminole tribe, as well as the users around the lake and also in the lower East Coast and Palm Beach and Broward counties. And then finally, another big benefit of LOSOM, you'll notice this arrow kind of in the middle here, which indicates the zones where we're making releases to the south. Under previous schedules, we stopped making releases as we approached the water shortage management ban, so this very low line. Under LOSOM, we preserve that opportunity if there is a need for beneficial flows to the south, that we can make those releases all the way down to water shortage management, which will allow us to hopefully move more water to the south when conditions are right to do so. Of course, all of this is done in partnership with the South Florida Water Management District, who is our operational partner on all of CNSF. So we're really coordinating with them closely on not only LOSOM and how we're managing Lake Okeechobee, but how we're managing the rest of the system, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we get into the decision process and how that's going to change moving forward. All right, just want to touch on a little bit of a few kind of keys in LOSOM. The first is kind of the overall plan for flows south. Want to just highlight that LOSOM itself is not pushing water to the south based on demands in the Everglades. Now, once we get some of the additional infrastructure that Gina was talking about, it's part of SEP, including the EAA reservoir, which we did award the first construction contract on at the end of last fiscal year. So that's good news. Once we have some of that additional infrastructure, including that reservoir and the SEP structures that will allow us to move water more efficiently through the southern part of the system, we'll relook at how we're doing lake operations and look at kind of a pull from the Everglades. Right now, we're looking for beneficial flow opportunities when they exist to release water from the lake, but we're not meeting any particular requirements from the south under this schedule. As I said, we'll relook at that once we have new infrastructure, including the EAA reservoir to the south. So our intent really is to promote beneficial flows to the south during the dry season. How is that a little different than where we've been? We're really trying to look at kind of mid and late season flows in moving south into the Everglades and how we can improve those with water from Lake Okeechobee. So that's really where we saw a lot of the benefits in the long-term modeling we did during LOSOM planning, was really getting more water to the south during the later parts of the dry season when it's really needed. During the wet season, especially kind of right now as a prime example, everything's really full. So there's really not an opportunity right now to move water from the lake through the EAA and the water conservation areas to the southern parts of the system because it is already so wet. So again, the kind of philosophy for LOSOM is really looking at the dry season flows and trying to really improve those when there's not water already available in the system. All right, next couple of things I want to highlight are things that may affect more of our flows to the coasts, including our lake recovery operations and harmful algal bloom operations. A lot of talk right now, because we are entering into the dry season and we've been pretty high with Lake Okeechobee over the last few years, is lake recovery operations, which were built into our toolbox to allow us to try to draw down Lake Okeechobee to improve the submerged aquatic vegetation within the lake, which has major benefits for not only the lake, but for both of the coasts as well, because it does clean the water within the lake. So then water moving out is much better quality, less nutrients, which has negative impacts, of course, in the coastal estuaries. Lake recovery operations are triggered if stages rise above 17 feet, which right now we're about 16.1 on the lake. So we haven't hit that target, but we have did not recede really below 13 feet for 30 days during the summer. And we've really seen a decrease in the submerged aquatic vegetation on the lake, which is less than 1,100 acres right now. So that trigger was met to start talking about lake recovery operations. Lake recovery operations, if implemented, and again, this is not something that's automatically triggered. So we would never just say, hey, we hit these targets, we're going to go into lake recovery operations. The intent is to really only try it when conditions, both the climate conditions really lend themselves to being successful. So you hear a lot of talk about this over the next month or so as we really enter dry season operations and talk about things like ENSO, which is kind of that affects the rainfall in the dry season, which currently it's kind of a moderate prediction, which means more or less a normal rainfall in the dry season. Lake stages, as I mentioned, have not really been low in the last 5 years. So that's really an important condition that we will look at as we talk about lake recovery operations, as well as kind of snail kite and water supply. So these are all things that are considered in the likelihood of success of lake recovery operations. Success being less than 12 feet for 90 days during the summer months, or less than 11.5 feet for 60 days during the summer months. So if we feel that there's a high probability of success in discussions with stakeholders, then lake recovery operations are something that we may choose to implement. Now that is still under discussion. I know the discussions with the stakeholders really kicked off this week with the periodic scientists call on Tuesday. And we got a lot of really good feedback. So those discussions will continue over the next few weeks to determine, do we want to try to bring the lake down? How would we do that under lake recovery operations? For S79, that means allowing flows up to 2,100 CFS rather than 2,000. So it's a slight increase at S79, but still within the not moving into the stressful releases. And to the east, under LOSOM, as I mentioned, there are 0 flows in Zone D most of the time. Lake recovery operations allow up to 1,400 CFS to be released from the lake, which is at the top of the desirable flow regime per the recover criteria. So we would be allowed to then make releases to the east under recovery operations. And then up to 300 CFS through 271, which is moving to Lake Worth Lagoon, and the maximum practicable to the south. As I mentioned, everything's really full right now, so there's not a lot of opportunity as we move into the dry season to move a lot of water to the south. So this has the potential to affect flows moving to the coast if we did choose to implement recovery operations, but that's still under discussion. And we'll make a determination if success seems to be likely over the next few weeks, and then kind of announce that intent later in November. The other kind of tool in the toolbox that really affects flows outside the normal operations of the schedule are harmful algal bloom operations. Previous schedules considered what was going on in terms of algal blooms, but it really wasn't built in and codified in the schedule. LOSOM changes that and really allows us to look at what's going on in terms of blooms, not only in the lake, but what's going on in the estuaries themselves in terms of HABs or red tide, and make decisions on releases based on those conditions. So if we do see waters near one of the structures where there's an active bloom, and we did that a lot this year, we may choose to not make releases that we normally could have because we don't want to transfer those blooms from the lake downstream. So that's a big consideration that is different in LOSOM than under LORS, and allows us to really do that coordination and make some smarter choices as far as when we're making releases and hold those back if conditions in terms of HABs are not ideal. Let's see, let's move on to the next slide. So kind of the key takeaways just from all of that information, because I know that was a lot. LOSOM's really focused on beneficial use of available water. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're trying to treat it as a valuable resource and make really smart decisions that will have benefits not only to the lake, but to the areas downstream that are receiving that water, getting it to them when they need it and not sending it when it's not needed. Partnership with the state is really imperative to successful management of not only Lake Okeechobee, but really the entire system. It's through that partnership that we were really able to try to marry up all of the infrastructure with the goals of water management for the system. And then finally, stakeholder and agency interaction in LOSOM was key during the development of the plan and will continue to be key as we manage the lake moving forward. But as I'll talk about in the next few slides, that's really going to be key in management of the entire system, not just Lake Okeechobee. All right. At this point, I'm going to switch over and talk a little bit more about the large-scale CNSF water management in our decision process and continued collaboration. We announced, I think, a few weeks ago at our final LOSOM PDT meeting, the intent to update our water management decision process. And I know there was some consternation. There were some folks who were not part of that didn't hear that message. And I do want to take a second to apologize that our communication on announcement of this was not done in the best fashion. But we'll work to try to make that up as we move into implementation of what we hope will be a more efficient information gathering process, a more efficient collaboration between agencies and the public. That will really lead us to better overall management, water management operations throughout the entire CNSF system. And I do mean from Orlando to the Keys. The intent is to really integrate the way we're talking about the system and making decisions on how water is moving throughout that. So kind of this flow chart at the bottom is just a general look at how the flow of information will happen through this new revamped process. And a lot of it's going to be similar to the interactions that have already been happening through things like the periodic scientist calls for Lake Okeechobee or the EBM calls for the southern part of the system. But we really want to expand on that and kind of structure it a little bit better so that we're able to not only get information, but share information and collaborate on what will be best in terms of water management for the entire system. So that starts with kind of an initial analysis between the Corps and the Water Management District of initial climatological data, current operations data, and putting that all together to then work with our agency partners. We'll have, in the next slide, we'll kind of talk about the meeting structures and when those will happen. But that will then flow into agency input and data collection, where we'll meet with our agency partners who have specialties in different areas around the system, get information from them, provide information from them, understand what the desired outcomes from water management operations will be for not only that smaller period, but for the seasonal outlooks as well. That information will then kind of roll into local engagement and collaboration, where we want to talk with the folks who are on the ground in the counties, the cities, in the public, and understand what are they seeing on the ground? What effects are they feeling from water management? What are their desires in terms of water management operations? And then we'll take all of that information and kind of roll it up for the decision makers. So on the core side, that's our Colonel Bowman, who will make ultimate decisions on water management releases for Lake Okeechobee and at the end of the water conservation area that's in the south for the structures that the Corps operates. And then on the South Florida Water Management District side, it's the executive director and the deputy who will make the decisions for the releases that the Water Management District controls on a daily basis. So all of the information that we'll gather and discuss with all of our stakeholders will really be beneficial for those who are making the final decisions on those operations. Finally, there will be a feedback loop, which we don't show on here. It was one of the big things that we heard in the LOSOM process was that stakeholders really want to understand how the information that is provided is used in the decision-making process. And then how are those decisions, what are the effects of those in the long term? So there will be a feedback loop that's kind of part of this too. In the short term, the intent is to, when we have the weekly or bi-weekly meetings, to talk about what decisions were made in terms of water management over the past couple of weeks, how the information we took in came into play in those decisions to provide that feedback. And then on a seasonal basis, one of the things I didn't show as part of LOSOM, we incorporated 3 seasonal check-ins to really look at longer term strategy and goals. Those are at the beginning of the dry season, the middle of the dry season, and the beginning of the wet season. Well, in addition to doing that for Lake Okeechobee, we're going to do that for the entire system. So we can all get together and really talk about where have we been, where are we right now, and where do we want to go over the next increment of time. So this feedback loop will be part of that kind of aggregated engagement as well. All right. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about the logistics of the meetings that will be kicking off actually next Tuesday. We'll have weekly meetings with our federal and state agency partners and the tribes. Those will occur every Tuesday. One week will be focused on the southern part of the system. The following week will be focused on the northern part of the system. And then we'll alternate weeks moving forward, but we'll meet every week with our state and federal agency partners to discuss water management operations. So like I said, next week, hopefully a lot of you already received those invitations to this first set of meetings. Next week, we'll start with the southern part of the system, and the map on the left here kind of shows the delineation of what would be included in each of these regions. The south will pretty much be everything from the EAA in the middle, all the way down to the Keys. So one of the things that I want to kind of discuss in terms of the southern part of the system meetings, the EBM call, which this will replace and hopefully incorporate all of that good sharing of information and collaboration. We also want to extend that out and really bring in our folks from the coasts as well. Folks in Palm Beach, Broward, Dade counties, really look at the ecosystems over there, look at water management in terms of flood risk management, water supply, and really have everybody participate all along the coast, not just focused on the Central Everglades area. So you'll see that kind of change where we're reporting out on operations and environmental conditions more along the coast. So you'll hear more about Biscayne Bay as part of this call than you would have previously. So this is an opportunity for additional engagement and bringing more people into the overall system operational perspective. And then the northern part of the system extends from Orlando down to the lake and then out to both coasts and to our estuaries. And again, the periodic sciences call, which our northern part of the system call will replace, really didn't have any focus on the Kissimmee Basin. So we really want to change that and bring in stakeholders from the Kissimmee Basin, because that's a major inflow into Lake Okeechobee. It has a major impact on what not only is happening in the lake, but what's happening to both coasts and then into the Everglades. So this is an opportunity to really expand our discussions, expand our interactions and collaborations with the agencies and other stakeholders, and really bring more people into the fold when we talk about water management operations through the entire CNSF system. The second part of the kind of new meeting battle rhythm that we kind of refer to it as within the Corps is biweekly or monthly meetings with local government agencies, non-government organizations, and public stakeholders. So again, that will happen right now. We've got that scheduled once a month. So our first meeting in this set, which will happen Tuesday afternoons. And I should mention the agency meetings will happen Tuesday mornings, 9 a.m. right now to 11:30. And then the local government, non-government organization, and public engagement will happen Tuesday afternoons, starting at 1 o'clock. The first one of those will happen November the 5th. And that will be focused on the southern part of the system. So what that will allow us to do by staggering that meeting with the agency meeting the previous week will be to provide kind of a roll-up of what did we hear from all of the agencies, and then provide the feedback on what did we do with all of the information in terms of the decision-making process, the previous increment. Again, we'll have those at least once a month. During the wet season, we may likely have those twice a month. So one week would be focused on the south, 1 week the north, and then alternating back to the south and the north, just like we will with the agency data collection meeting in the morning. And then, as I mentioned, there will be 3 seasonal assessment points. This was kind of what we did in LOSOM, and this will be applied to the entire system. We'll have early dry season, which will be that November timeframe, middle of the dry season, likely March timeframe, and then early wet season, so late May, beginning of June, to really talk about kind of what are the seasonal goals and desires throughout the system based on where we've been, where we are, and where we want to end up. Give us those check-in points to then also provide feedback on kind of what we're seeing in terms of how did the decision-making over the previous increment of time, how did it really produce benefits, or were there lessons learned coming out of that as well? And with that, I will stop and open it up for any questions that anybody has.
All right, folks, don't be shy.
And while people are thinking if they want to ask a question or not, you can always feel free to reach out to me directly in email or phone call, or we will have a new email address to collect information from around the system that I'll post in the chat. And then if you're not already part of the email distro for either the agency meetings or the local government and stakeholder collaboration meetings, let me know and I'll make sure you get added, because I think it's really important to have, especially from this group, the perspectives of what's going on within the estuaries and the reef systems, so that can really inform our water management decision-making process. So that participation and that perspective is really important. So if you're not already part of it, let us know so we can get you on our distro and you can be part of those meetings.
So Wes, if I could, I'm not seeing any
Please.
hands here. Alrighty. Tim, thank you. Really, really appreciate it. I think from the coral researchers, the workers here on the call, It's a great reminder seeing the maps that we're all essentially downstream of a managed watershed somewhere on there, and we have opportunity to engage. I think later in the meeting, we're going to talk about PDT participation. So that's thinking about those future projects. But I think that the critical piece that you're talking about in here for LOSUM and for other things like that is that this is the current operations. This is where we're looking at the flexibility within the plans of our current operations and being able to make adjustments. And so just for the team here to think about this as we're learning about inland restoration and the connections to the coral, we should be watching for those opportunities where we can positively influence current operations for the benefit of coral reef systems as well as all the other systems in between. So appreciate you just kind of, in a way, you're hitting on all the issues in LOSUM, but you're also showing us some really great maps that are kind of refreshing that particular aspect of it. So that's all I have for right now, but thank you again.
Okay, and we'll take one more second, see if anybody else would like to raise anything with Tim. Okay, folks, well, you know where to find him. So Tim, thanks so much for your time and great work working through that process and now being in a position to implement. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and talk today.
Our pleasure. Next up, we're going to move to a presentation on CCAR. We've had a couple of presentations sort of give a sense of what CCAR is. Well, we've finally got the CCAR project lead to come in and talk about the work she's overseen for about 8 years now. She's been with the state through the Department of Environmental Protection since about 2008. And I'd love to turn the floor over to Cheryl Clark.
Thank you, and I apologize. I don't work with Zoom very often, and every time I do, I somehow lose all of my control. So hopefully you can see my screen. And
looking good right now.
Perfect. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Cheryl Clark. I want to start just by introducing the whole team. Dr. Stephen Durham has been working with me almost from the beginning. Tyler Hill and Michael Loeb are fairly new to the project. Dr. Sean Landry and Claude Kershaw with the Water Institute are the ones who are really working on the data discovery interface, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And the project wouldn't be possible without them. So a huge thank you to them. And Zoe Rubin, who is our National Academy of Science and Policy Fellow, who's been on the project for a year, will be presenting with me today. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So today we're going to be going over how the CCAR project has brought stakeholders and data together. The data discovery interface, which is really the foundation of the CCAR project, GitHub, and where you can find the data and the meta-analysis that we're doing for this project, next steps and highlights. But before I do that, I really want to thank our funding agencies. The Florida Coastal Management Program and NOAA have been funding this project since 2016 when it started, and we're extremely grateful for that. CCAR is a stakeholder-driven collaborative project working with local, state, and federal agencies, as well as academic institutions and NGOs to utilize current knowledge and scientific data to assess the status and trends of submerged habitats and provide the best available science to help guide planning, management, restoration, and policy decisions. We knew going into this it was going to be a huge project. We looked at a lot of other projects and lessons learned. And one of the things that kept coming up was that we really needed to engage the end users from the very start. So we identified 3 teams who we've been working with: the DEP steering team and the CCAR team lead the project, make sure we're staying on task. The data team provides the scientific knowledge and expertise for the project, and our partner team provides management and policy perspective. So the data and partner team members, after considering the existing long-term data sets that we had available in the state, identified 5 habitats and 16 habitat-specific indicators, which ultimately resulted in 63 parameters being included in the initial assessment. And in addition to that, they wanted all of this housed in one database. This was their list of criteria that they put together. I do want to note that the database was not in the original scope of work for CCAR, but we were initially only supposed to include 3 indicators statewide, so the database really became a necessity, and it's now the foundation of the whole project. This list seemed a bit impossible when we first collected this information back in 2016, but with the help and collaboration with the Water Institute, we have done it, and we are really, really excited about the product that we have created. The CCAR DDI provides public access to a huge amount of information and data, and it's also the access point for data providers. One of the things that all of the data providers said is that they don't want to have to reformat their data. They don't want to have to re-enter their data if it's already available someplace else. So the DDI allows the program editors with login credentials to update all of the information on their program pages. They can add data, GIS files, reports, protocols, and QA documents all through a drag and drop system. And if the data is available through another portal, they just provide us with the identifiers that we need, and we pull that data automatically as scheduled so that they don't have to re-enter that data. So we're eliminating that duplication of effort for data providers. Additionally, something that we added after was that the data providers can also identify when they want to be contacted. So we're not just sending out emails in January asking for people to update their files. If you're collecting seagrass and you are collecting in August and it takes you a month to do your QA/QC, you can identify when you want us to remind you to upload your data. And this has resulted in an increased number of programs maintaining their data. So it's a fun new feature that we're really excited about. But we are receiving data from 40 different organizations, and that is a lumped list. And they're contributing data to over 150 programs through this drag and drop method. So that creates a lot of challenges. We have, of course, inconsistencies in data format because nobody collects their data the same way. We expected that. But there is a lack of metadata for a lot of these programs, unknown units of measure, unknown sampling methods, sampling locations and station names that aren't standardized or have inconsistent or incorrect data coordinates. And then the species matching, which admittedly was an issue that I didn't anticipate at the beginning and has become one of the biggest successes or challenges with the project. We now have a standardized list of species that we match with authoritative sources, and all of the information that comes in, whether it's a wide variety of acronyms, abbreviations, common names, misspellings, and outdated taxonomic names. We work with the programs and identify those and match them with a standardized list. So this is an extremely simplified diagram of the CCAR data process. We have multiple feedback loops throughout this process. When the data providers submit their data through the DDI, both myself and USF get an email with all of those changes and or the files that were uploaded. We do a visual inspection of that information. If there's any issues, we go back to the data provider, ask them for updates, information, or correct the issue. If everything looks good, it goes into the data processing portion. And we have unique data integration procedure scripts that are created for every single program so that their unique data files can be brought into the standardized tables. We match the GIS sampling locations and sample names so that they can be mapped. We do the species matching to the authoritative sources. And then the data processing involves matching the unique metadata information from that program to standardize the results. Additionally, we do some extra classifications, so anything like macroalgae is identified as drift or attached because we have different purposes in the analyses. We also apply QA/QC flags. The threshold flags that we use are the thresholds that are identified by the department for WIN. We have expected values flags for things like Bromblon scores. So if a value is put into the data that is outside the expected range, that gets flagged. We also have recently implemented a quantiles flag, so that doesn't exclude the data from the analysis. It just flags it so that we can take a closer look at it and speak with the programs if we need to. It just identifies the unusual data relative to all of the data within the DDI for a given indicator. Once it goes through that process, it goes to the public page. And then if you have used the DDI, you will see that there is a report an issue with this page. And if you press that button, I will receive an email as well as the University of South Florida, and we will respond and correct the issue as soon as we can. I'm going to turn it over to Zoe to tell you a little bit more about the public-facing portion of the project.
So, as Cheryl mentioned, we have the Data Discovery Interface, or DDI. This is one proponent of the database, the CCAR website. So I'll kind of quickly go through the others. We have the homepage, which shows the link to the monitoring programs, and the data discovery interface, which is the login portion for data providers with credentials. We also have our funding and data statements listed. Then we have our monitoring programs page. This is all programs known to have data pertinent to CCAR. And then we have our program matrix page, which is all programs with standardized data in addition to that raw data. We also have our data discovery interface page again listed along the top. So this is another way of navigating to that password protected data provider side of things. And then we have awesome mapping features that are all interactive maps, including sample locations by indicator maps, sample locations by program map, and a data discovery map that allows you to look at habitats, indicators, and programs. So once you navigate to the program matrix page, this is a screenshot of what you would see, and you are able to filter by a couple of different things, including habitat, region, indicator, or managed area, or if you have a specific program in mind and you know some of the text associated with that program, you can use the search bar to filter for any of the text in the table. And whatever you search or filter for will be curated in a list of programs. And this list of programs can be exported to Excel, PDF, or printed. And along this list of programs, you have the program ID, program name, region, method for data collection, parameters, start and end year, frequency, and managing entity. And from this list, you can navigate to each of those individual program pages. So here's an example, kind of like a data in action example on the CCAR database. Here we are using the mapping feature to look specifically at the coral reef area, and we were querying specifically for benthic data. So here you can see there are 21 unique programs represented here that are collecting coral reef data, oyster reef data, or submerged aquatic vegetation data, which is our seagrass and macroalgae. And there are 11 unique data providers within this one screenshot of the map. And the timescale covers 1985 to current. So this is a really useful feature because you can see where benthic data overlays. You could also combine this with water quality data and see where water quality and water clarity is matching up with benthic data. And each of these points, sampling points on the map, can be clicked on and navigated to that specific program page. So getting back to the program matrix page, if you were to click on one of the programs from that program matrix page, you would get a wealth of information about the program. So this is information that the data providers have provided, such as their protocols and QA documents, any associated reports and publications, and then they've uploaded their raw data, and we also provide the standardized data exports. We also have extent maps and a monitoring location map. And getting back into those mapping features again, as I had mentioned previously, you can overlay benthic data with water quality data, as well as view the spatial extent of monitoring for specific indicators and parameters. You can view the sampling methodologies, identify sampling locations that are located both inside and outside of resilience and coastal protection managed areas. So we do have boundary layers for those managed areas included in the map that can be filtered for. You can identify data gaps and also improve partnerships through data collaboration by looking at who is collecting data where, which helps inform management planning. And I'll turn it back to Cheryl.
Thanks. So another product that we recently created was the CCAR GitHub site, and this was so that we could share the scripts, analysis results, reports, and dashboards that we were creating for the project. The reports provide a managed area and program level overview of the information that we have available in CCAR. And supporting figures and tables are also available not only in the reports, but as output files, and provide a more comprehensive picture of how the combined data from multiple programs and sources are contributing to the meta-analysis. I found that the spatiotemporal figure there in the center is extremely helpful in deciphering if the changes that we're seeing are due to actual habitat changes or potentially changes in monitoring programs, protocols, and locations. We are continually working to integrate recommendations from stakeholders and increase transparency. For those of you who have been using the CCAR DDI for a while, hopefully you noticed with your recent exports that you now receive a full metadata package with each of those. That is a new feature. We are also working on updating the editor pages. So if you are a data provider in the future, when you log on, we will be providing a summary of the program data, the unique sampling locations, method-specific metadata, and a summary of the flag data. And we're hoping that this will increase the level of review from the data providers and lead to improvements in our process. And we are also working to incorporate macroinvertebrate data in the future, hopefully, and creating an interactive website. Another project that you heard about at your last meeting, we are working with the department and FWC to evaluate ways to integrate the Florida's Coral Reef Unified Water Quality Monitoring Project with CCAR. We currently have created a project page for them within CCAR, so you can find the data from that project as well as some of their other products by searching the DDI for the project name or the ID 10006.
And now we'll just discuss a little bit of the data in action. So some CCAR stats, we've had nearly 8,000 downloads since 2019. And these download purposes include data quality assurance and quality control, data synthesis, management, and research. And a specific example, we'll put a spotlight on South Florida. The Florida Coral Reef Resilience Program's water quality team is using CCAR data to identify gaps in water quality data along the reef. And we're making recommendations to FCRCT on how to address these gaps. So this aids the efforts to assess the relationship between Everglades restoration, the reef, and coastal resilience of South Florida. So this is a reef-specific example. NOAA also uses CCAR as an example of a 309 project that has been successful in data aggregation. And another example of data in action is the Big Bend Seagrasses Aquatic Preserve. They have used CCAR to align their methods, their seagrass monitoring methods, with those of other programs, thus increasing data comparability. And these comparable data shared publicly on CCAR can now contribute to meta-analyses and status and trends, excuse me. So just to wrap it all up, we'll discuss some of the highlights of CCAR. CCAR is guided by a stakeholder input process that has led to some notable features that distinguish CCAR from other information synthesis projects. Specifically, we focus on comparability, quality, transparency, and accessibility. So for comparability, program raw data files are ingested in their original format and then standardized by the project staff. So data users have access to both the raw data and the standardized data files that can be readily combined with other programs' data files to facilitate these meta-analyses, therefore adding to the completeness of the picture both spatially and temporally. For quality assurance and quality control, once a data provider has submitted data to CCAR, which should in theory be quality checked by the provider, it undergoes additional QA/QC as part of the data integration and standardization process. For transparency, both our raw data and supporting documentation are available for download on each program page, in addition to the standardized data exports, and contacts for each data provider are listed on each program page. As for accessibility, we have summary information and data, easily readable on each program page, and the mapping page provides a visual companion to this. And we will be adding a companion to these current features with the CCAR Atlas and dashboard. So that will be our CCAR public-facing website and our data dashboards in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Any questions?
See if I can get our Zoom stuff to come back over so we can see you.
I got you covered.
Thank you.
Very welcome. That was awesome. Thank you. What a fantastic resource. Anyone from the team have any questions, comments, concerns? As mentioned in the presentation, we are utilizing the database in order to help push forward with some of our coordinated actions. So we're really grateful for the fact that we don't have to create this ourselves. So
yeah, that's the ticket.
All right.
Yeah. Really great turnout on this meeting today, Wes, and it's kind of, I'm looking for the hand raising feature to see if anybody, and I do not see anybody bringing up questions on the data side. As a data geek myself, I greatly appreciate this particular presentation. So thank you.
Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And if anybody has anything further, I'm sure we'll follow up with you all soon.
Thank you.
All right. If I can, Wes, we're on item 6 for the
So
water
Eric,
quality.
if you don't mind, I'm actually going to take chair's prerogative here, just to kind of keep us moving and on time. We're going to adjust the agenda just slightly and sort of blend together the entire discussion here that we have for 6, 7, and 8. So I just want to make sure we can get through the voting that we're going to be doing. Jose, folks, can we pull up the meeting slides, or I can do it myself? What's easiest?
It's up to you, Wes. I have them pulled up here though, if you want me to do it.
Okay, if that's easy for you, that's great. Thanks, Sam. And so just we'll just sort of get reoriented into the schedule here and sort of the specific things we're working on with respect to our coordinated actions. Next slide, Sam. So this has been a challenging year from a scheduling perspective, as we all know. But here we are, almost 3/4 of the way through, more than 3/4 of the way through 2024. So we are going to try to keep this train moving on time. We have had December 6th held, as everyone knows, since pretty much the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, some scheduling issues have arisen with the task force. That if a meeting is held in the timeframe of the 4th and 5th, make it actually very difficult for us utilizing OERI's technical staff to do this meeting on the 6th. So I actually just wanted to try to get a sense and have a conversation with everybody now very quickly about the general feeling, whether it is worth holding that date or sort of doing a double duty meeting in January, kind of closing out 2024 and starting up on a fresh foot in 2025. So I'll welcome any comments now on whether we just want to, if we want to try to hold that date or not, knowing that it might have to be postponed anyway, or whether folks are good looking for a January date now. Yes, Chris.
I was just going to vote for the shifting to January because I already have a full day meeting holding on December that I'll be doing in an airport because I'll be running from another meeting to it.
That's a good reason. I also see CJ's hand is up.
Yeah, I can make December 6th work, but I'm certainly, up to whatever the group wants. I can find time in January as well.
And yeah, Dana.
Same as CJ.
Wade.
Can make either
Yeah,
work.
they're the same. There's a lot going on at that point in December.
Does anyone have strong concerns with moving out of the December 6th date? All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised there. So I'm just going to go ahead and see, based on this, I think it's probably wise just to move that calendar hold off and look for a date in January. So I just want to get a let's just do a little vote here just to make sure I'm not off my rocker. If everybody who is supportive of moving to sort of a January double meeting kind of format, go ahead and raise your hand now. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I mean, just nearly everybody. So I'm going to say that's going to carry in majority fashion for this unofficial vote. So I'm going to ask on that basis for Alessandra and Sam to get out a poll, in the next week or so to start looking for a January date. And probably make it about a half day type of deal, so that we can fit in both the December and sort of that annual January planning meeting that we've come to do. So thank you for that. That helps move us forward. We still have a couple hands up. I'm not sure if folks have comment, or Deb, Angela, if you do, feel free. Okay, all right, great. Sam, next slide, please. All right, and that takes us to the bulk of the action we need to get to today. If you remember from the July meeting, we really focused on this coordinated action 4 and really spent some time talking about the anticipated impacts watch list. Next slide. In general, what we've accomplished for the year so far, again, really talking about the watch list and the need for the PDT assignments. We did conduct an in-meeting review of the anticipated impacts watch list. and we did work to get changes together on the basis of the comments that were made in that meeting and some additional follow-on comments that happened. So today we're going to look to adopt that watch list. And so before we do that, I'm going to take control of the screen here to just flash it on on the screen here. Make sure I'm looking at the right documents. Okay, and so let me shift to a one-page view and zoom in for everybody. So essentially, the model that we've been working towards is to develop these strategies for coordinated action that will be nested within the unified monitoring framework and iteratively adapted as need be as new information comes to light. And each of these strategies will include a relatively short narrative to explain to folks who have not been involved in the process what we've done here, right, and what we're trying to communicate. And essentially, we're trying to make these as simple and easy as possible for folks. What we ended up doing as a reminder is to then develop a series of tables. I'm going to shrink back on the Zoom. A series of tables that sort of laid out those projects that we as an FCRCT are interested in continuing to monitor and also provide feedback on through the various planning and design phases and whatnot that invariably come up in the interagency development of these projects or interventions as they're noted here. And as you all recall, we actually simplified these tables even further, such that now, so that the different tables, for instance, this table is interventions undergoing planning and design. So all sort of grouped together by where they are in the process, and therefore how much attention we should be paying to them. Table 2 is active interventions. So these are things that have already been designed and are being implemented in some way, shape, or form. And then table 3 is those projects which are not yet in future planning and design, but that we know are on the tracks. And then a table 4, completed or inactive interventions. So we have those lists, and then also associated with them are these reasonably expected modes of impact, which again allow us and the casual reader of this document to sort of try to understand what part of the system this intervention may or may not be impacting, right? And that then guides what we're paying attention to, and again, the comments and feedback they get provided between us and the agencies involved in actually designing and implementing the interventions. So again, those three modes are defined above in the short piece here as those combined quantity, quality, timing, and distribution of freshwater deliveries to the coast, local or regional coastal water quality, and biological and ecological characteristics of the Florida's coral reef and associated resources. So this reflects all the comments that were made in the last meeting. I will note we do have an addition and actually I think it got put in the wrong place. I'm sorry. Let's see if I can quickly adjust that for everybody. So the CNSF regional resiliency study, which is being, oh boy, excuse me. which is being led by the Army Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District project. South Florida Water Management District have really been taking the lead on this, and this is essentially and here it is right here. So it is actively undergoing planning and design right now. This is essentially sort of another look at the Central and Southern Florida water management flood control system with very specific goals to address sort of the flood resilience factors of the system going forward. And I definitely want to kind of open this one up to discuss a little bit more in terms of how we want to address this, because it is a kind of an interesting fit, in part because that study has now been broken into some sort of sub-studies as well. Before I do that, I'm gonna invite Dr. Ralph, who's got a hand raised, to chime in.
Hi everyone, I'm Gina Ralph with the Corps of Engineers. Sorry I wasn't able to be at your July meeting. It conflicted with our monthly Recover meetings. So I did want to just maybe state that for some of the projects in the planning stage, such as the very first one, Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades Restoration, this group would likely have a little bit more of an impact on the plan that is selected because it is still in the planning phase. Those that have gone to the design phase, we're not saying that there couldn't be alterations, but it's a much larger and longer process that would require additional National Environmental Policy Act compliance, additional authorization potentially. So I'm not sure if you want to denote those somehow as more of like a higher priority to put on the watch list, not negating any of the effects or the benefits of the others that they could have on the Reef tract. But I think the ability to inform selection of an alternative plan, you would have a greater ability to do that in those currently under planning. So on your list there, that would include the very first one, Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades, and then the resiliency study that you have highlighted in yellow. The other ones are into design, specifically the Broward County Water Preserve Area and Loxahatchee, and Western Everglades just signed a chief's report. So that one is awaiting authorization and appropriation before we can move out with design and construction.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gina. Yeah, and I think, what I would say in response to that is, and hopefully the next step of the process today is that we're actually going to solicit volunteers and assign actual PDT team members to represent the FCRCT, and not just represent us there, but also bring information back from those meetings. And so I think it will also kind of sort itself out where those areas where there's influence and where there's not, and where it's just keeping everybody kind of abreast of what's going on there. But it's a very good note about how planning and design works at the Corps, certainly, and what those levers available are. If we can, I'd like to take a second to talk a little bit more about the inclusion of the CNSF flood resiliency study here. I have kind of tentatively put question marks in terms of the reasonably expected modes of impact. Again, because we're talking about an adjustment to the existing water control infrastructure, where in many ways the goals of the study are to maintain the current ability to move water. And so it's not entirely clear to me whether we should necessarily expect impacts, and if we do, in what sort of direction we might see for those different categories. But I'd welcome anybody who thinks maybe they should be marked differently to speak up.
Hi, Wes. This is Cassandra.
Yeah.
Hi.
Please.
So, I just wanted to provide a little bit of background on this, and I was intimately involved in this up until a couple of months ago when I transitioned positions, and I know since then there's been a little bit of a modification to the project, but for the most part, this project is mostly an infrastructure evaluation project to make sure that our coastal structures can withstand the anticipated climate change issues, increased sea level rise, increased freshwater flow from increased precipitation. There was originally an attempt to look at some ways to increase green infrastructure as part of the project, but I think that got scaled down. So as far as impact to water quality and to coral reefs, I think the question marks are very valid because the project itself is a little fluid, and also there may be additions of green infrastructure that might have a positive impact or could have zero impact. It's just a gray infrastructure study. So I think question marks are completely appropriate for the current state of this project.
Thank you, Cassandra, and appreciate your depth of background on that. I'm gonna ask. I mean, the local governments, the county governments, have been fairly engaged in this. So if anybody representing the county governments wants to speak up specifically about this piece too, I'd welcome that.
I think that was a poke at me, right, Wes?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, thanks, Wes.
So Laura did suggest that this project be added to Alan and I back when we were soliciting additional comments. So thank you, Laura.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, anything we think of the upland footprint and the huge amount of canal systems within our area down here, as we understand that conveyance of whatever those potential nutrients might be, bacteria, we understand that that can have some sort of impact. We've seen a lot of research come out recently through, Dr. Walker, some more recent information. I think we got an email this morning from a paper from Dr. Alt from looking at nutrient contributions coming out of the canals within Miami-Dade County. So anything related to potential increase for conveyance or movement through Biscayne system, movement through the estuary, and then offshore to potentially impact corals. I think we need to continue to understand what those levels of impacts, potential, if there's going to be any parameter of concern or things like that. So I think it's definitely something to monitor and consider. And of course, the county is involved in this study, so we're happy to continue those discussions.
Great. Any other comments or concerns specific to the addition of the CNSF flood resiliency study and its sub-components in the reaches? What Cassandra was alluding to is it's actually kind of being broken up into some smaller pieces that will be managed by different partners. But again, it's all sort of under the authority and intent of the broader Central and Southern Florida flood resiliency study, covering parts of Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties. Okay, seeing no other comments or concerns, I'm gonna ask to see if we have a motion to move forward and get a vote to adopt strategy for coordinated action number 4. CJ.
Sure, I'll bite, Wes. Motion to move the actions that are incorporated within this document here to move them forward in the Florida Coral Reef Coordination Team.
Okay, so motion for adoption of the anticipated impacts watch list. Just that part of strategy for coordinated action number 4. Do we have a second to support CJ's motion?
Yes, I will second that.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, I'm gonna actually call out names of the voting members on this one, just so that we have a clear record of votes. So we will start with Chris Eggleston.
Yes.
Sarah Fangman. Did we lose Sarah? Okay, we'll come back to Sarah. Wade Lehman.
Yes.
Gil McCrae.
Yes.
Alex Reed.
Yes.
CJ.
Yes.
Dave Whiting.
Yes.
And Dana.
Yes.
Vice Chair Stabenow.
Yes.
Alex, I'll give you another opportunity if you, or I'm sorry, Sarah, I'll give you another opportunity.
Sorry, yes.
Oh, that's okay, no problem. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
And please record the chair's vote as a yes as well. So that's unanimous adoption of the anticipated impacts watch list on October 25th. Thank you all for us to be able to move that forward. Sam, can we go back to the presentation? Okay, and we will next slide. So the next thing we need to do is to find volunteers and hopefully assign some members as formal representatives on the PDTs. Now notice that we have not yet formalized a process for engagement, but I do think it's important that we start getting folks engaged in the meetings and paying attention so that we can pick up when we're ready to, especially on the 2 projects that Gina pointed out are in active planning right now. So next slide. Thank you for everybody that responded to the call for things they already participate in. I don't believe that we're going to have any issues as far as folks being dual-hatted, both representing their individual agencies as well as the coordination team. I think that we can make it fairly clear in the procedures that we develop that's probably a necessity for many of the people involved, but that also we can make sure when someone is speaking for the FCRCT in general, that's made pretty clear as well during these meetings. So like I said, for the most part right now, we're really interested in getting reporting back from the PDTs on these projects to the FCRCT, just as a matter of course. So again, and some folks are way more engaged in the PDTs by nature of their positions. Gina, I think, takes the cake for being involved pretty much universally. But we'd really like to see if there are folks that are interested in volunteering to sort of be our eyes and ears and speaking for the FCRCT when they're already engaged in some of this further work. And I will just say in particular, I think that this is a really important opportunity and a real a place where our local governments, I think, can really be strong advocates for the resource in their backyard. So I would welcome their more strong involvement in this particular part of what's going on as well, because no one knows the resource better than you all do. So with that, I think if folks want to just raise their hands and we can start to write down folks who may be interested in doing this, we can do that fairly quickly. I guess I can start going down the project list as well. So maybe we'll do that. Yeah, Gina, I'm sorry, please.
No worries. I just want to make sure everyone has a common understanding of a project delivery team and the stages that the Corps uses those forums. So when we're in the planning phase, we will have a project delivery team in which we invite state and federal agencies, the tribes, and other interested parties. And we have these monthly meetings, we have sub-team meetings, etc. When it goes into the design phase, depending upon whether the Corps is designing it or whether the South Florida Water Management District is designing it, there is no longer a PDT process. That's generally done in-house within the agencies. And of course, the Corps and South Florida Water Management District are always, talking. FDEP becomes involved when we go through the permitting process, as well as U.S. Fish and Wildlife and FWC if there are wildlife concerns. But there isn't a formalized project delivery team during that design phase. So I just want to make sure that everyone has that common understanding that, once we get there, there will be, biannual or annual public meetings in which we provide updates. So I think the participation will be much more limited, and you likely would be relying on either Cassandra or I to provide those updates of the projects that are in design.
I appreciate that greatly. So I would say that in those situations where projects are into design, we'd still probably want to have somebody who can tune into those public meetings. But yes, we would probably lean in on you, Gina, and Cassandra quite a bit to kind of shuttle messages back and forth and help understand those situations. And for that reason, I'd actually ask that neither you nor Cassandra actually be the FCRCT lead on any of these things, because I do think that you'll probably play quite a role there later on, if and when we need to pull that trigger. So, but yes, thank you for highlighting that, especially for folks who are not very involved with the PDT process and keeping up with these projects in general. So just in the interest of time, I think I'll just go project by project. And if Sam and Alessandra can sort of just record folks that are interested in taking on an FCRCT hat for these, and we'll record that, and then we'll kind of follow back up with everybody after the fact. And none of this will be official until we come back and quote unquote adopt that. So don't be too shy. So let's go first and foremost with the Laura. I see you have your hand up. Do you have a comment, or are you already jumping on the Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades Restoration Project?
Well, I just had a quick clarifying question, Wes. Are we talking specifically about FCRCT members being on the PDTs, or are we talking about organizational representation being on these PDTs? So obviously, like, for example, Miami-Dade County, we have a lot of department heads and staff spread all over anything related to Miami-Dade County. But we've also got someone like my boss, Craig Rosenbacher, who is very, very well adept into all of these as well. So he's got a bit of a closer nexus to me. So while it may not be exactly myself, someone who oversees and knows a lot about what's going on with FCRCT is representing themselves and the county in this process. So where do we want to draw that line?
Funny you should ask. The vice chair and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. And so in some ways, I don't want to be too prescriptive on that. And granted, we still have to flesh out, how, if we're going to have any directives for participation and things like that. I think what's important, and Eric, feel free to jump in to talk about any of this as well, is that the FCRCT has a designee that is responsible for reporting back. So how your agency, chooses, how you all do your internal process for dealing with that. My preference is that remains your business and not mine or anybody else's here. But that the FCRCT would look to an individual on this team to be in charge of keeping us in the loop on what's going on there, as well as getting any FCRCT message out to those project delivery teams as well.
I could add briefly, Wes, that, and for Laura, just to give you my thoughts on it, and BB's here is the one as an example. So I've got a lot of team members that are spending a good deal of time in the teams and sub-teams of that project as they're going along. And that information is common conversation and positional planning here inside the organization. And the only one really in this group that's thinking of it from the FCRCT point of view is probably me. I get that information from them and I'm paying attention to it from our point of view and pushing that information back into our team. And I intend to, as time goes on, pull information from that to bring back to this group. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of it right now, but it is kind of in an early stage figuring out what this looks like. So
great, thank you. So we'll just do this just through the raise hand feature. If Sam and Alessandra are ready to just kind of monitor that, I'll ask for volunteers for a project, and don't be shy. So we can write down more than one volunteer right now. We'll sort it out later, but we need volunteers. So Biscayne Bay and Southeastern Everglades Restoration. If you're interested, go ahead and use the raise your hand feature. Okay, Eric Stabenow and Shelley Kruger. Thank you. Let's look at Biscayne Bay and Biscayne Bay coastal wetlands. Again, if you are interested in volunteering, go ahead and raise your hand. So I see Eric Stabenow and Laura Eldridge. Okay, thank you. Broward County Water Preserve Areas. See Angela Delaney. All right. C111 Spreader Canal Western Project.
Gina could speak to this one at some extent, but it may be that it's so far along and our features are in BBC that it's not drawing a lot of recognition and awareness right now.
It could also make it much easier to fulfill your role, folks. Okay. We'll come back to that one. Central Everglades Planning Project. Okay, for SEP, I've got Elizabeth Kelly and Eric Stabenow. CNSF Flood Resiliency Study. I will go ahead and throw my hat into the ring on that one. Got Angela as well. Thank you. All right, the Combined Operational Plan. COP. COP's really flying under the radar. Oh, okay. We'll come back to that in the future as well. Florida Keys Water Quality Improvement Program. All right, I see Alex Reed and Shelley Kruger. Thank you all. Indian River Lagoon South. Got Elizabeth Kelly. And I realize I haven't been looking down, and Wade Lehman has raised his hand as well. I realize I haven't been looking down as well. Has anybody raised their hand further down the screen that I've missed? I apologize if so. Feel free to jump in at any time to tell me what I missed you for. Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual. Okay, I have Sam, Elizabeth Kelly, Gil McCrae, and Eric Stabenow. Loxahatchee River Watershed Restoration Project. I see Alex Reed, Elizabeth Kelly, and I think Deb had emailed at one point about that one. Deb, are you on? Are you listening?
I am. I'm here.
I don't mean to twist your arm. Just okay. So we can write down Deb for now.
There
as
haven't
well.
been a lot of meetings that I have been aware of. So I'll just say that.
And there probably won't be going forward, right? For all the points that Gina made, because we're moving forward into design. But
yep.
Picayune Strand. This one's an interesting one for us because it's sort of out west. All right, Alex, thank you very much. And Western Everglades Restoration. Got Gil McCrae and Eric Stabenow. Okay, thank you all, everybody who's volunteered to pick up a piece of that. We'll work through that internally and get back with folks and try to whittle that down and move some pieces around. So we've got full coverage on that. Thank you. You can go to the next slide.
Oh, Wes, I do want to do a quick time check. It's 3:22. Our meeting ends at 3:30.
I'm on it. We're on. Thank you, Sam. So as far as formalizing a process for PDT engagement, our vice chair has graciously agreed to use his experience to think through kind of at least a kind of idea document about what that might look like. And so I think I think everybody should look forward to that coming to their inboxes before the next meeting so that we can have a broader discussion about that at the first half of our January meeting, which will be our 2024 closeout meeting. Next slide. Thank you, Eric, for that. We're going to zoom by questions because Sam's on top of it. We're going to go to the next slide. And very quickly, Sam, if you want to give a very quick update on where we stand on the strategies for coordinated action, one on nutrients and other abiotic parameters. I'll turn it over to you real quick.
Yep. So I actually met with the FWC team on Monday to discuss this. Basically for action 1, the nutrient data has been collated. It's in one place. I believe almost all of that has been input into CCAR. They're currently working on the abiotic parameters right now. It seems like there's going to be a lot more programs for the abiotic parameters than for the nutrients, just because of, I don't want to say the general ease of collecting data, but from what I understand, nutrients is a lot harder. But all of that is in progress, and for action 1, we should have all of that information collected and put into a report by December. I will likely be sending out a draft summary of that before our next meeting, so keep an eye out for that. I think that's it for action 1. Yep, that's all I have.
Thank you, Sam. Let's go on to the next slide then. And one more, there we go. Okay, so the biological and ecological monitoring programs are in a very similar state to what Sam just mentioned. So we will we'll be pulling that off of CCAR as well, and we might have some follow-up that we do with FWC. But we're looking forward to get that out in some form for review as well before the next meeting. Thanks, Sam. And then action 3, Sam, go one more. So this relates to our the workshop actually that we did. We got a really good brief update from Gil on that last time in July on that multiple day workshop that that preceded our meeting. Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you real quick, and you want to share a little bit more about what you've been working on there with that.
Yep, I put together a document, but I'll probably share that after this meeting just to keep us on time. After the workshop, we went through and basically collated all of the notes and comments and feedback that we got from the managers and technical experts who attended. And we came up with a list of about, I believe, 8 specific recommendations and about 25 parameters that we agreed that we should be focusing on moving forward and incorporating as we think about the different actions. So I will send all of that out again for review from you all. I will ask if you have feedback, that would be very, very helpful. One of the things that we found from the workshop is that it was very much a first step, and the recommendations that we came up with are probably going to overlap with some of our future actions. But it will likely take a lot more conversation to figure out exactly what we need to do to make this work as seamlessly as possible. So I'm going to send it out, and I would request that you send back feedback. And please don't be afraid of being mean. It would be very, very helpful to get your honest opinions. So keep an eye out for that.
I think it's fair to be critical. Let's try not to be mean. So, but nonetheless, as you can see here from the schedule, you know, we're going to be working on further reviewing those products now, and then we'll look to refine that at the next meeting. So we are nowhere near the adoption stage yet. The recommendations that Sam is going to send around are very early draft. And we kept them that way because we specifically want team input on what that final collection of recommendations and ultimately what we hope agencies pursue actually is. So thank you, Sam, for all your great work on the workshop and what's to come. Next slide. And we're just gonna go through these. This is probably more related to work we will do next year. So go ahead and breeze through these for now, Sam. So we will discuss next steps in the January meeting, as well as the potential for a Mary's update workshop. And then I just wanted to keep folks' eyes on the prize here. You know, we are after we make our way through those actions, we're then sort of we will have a really good sense and we'll be able to provide a synthesis of sort of where monitoring stands to date in a way that hasn't been comprehensively analyzed previously. And then we're really shifting into gap identification and also trying to figure out, you know, pragmatic recommendations again that we can work with existing programs to sort of take up that hopefully vastly expand not just the reach of the data monitoring that's happening, but also the power of it. So we're excited for that. Next slide. And that's going to be a real big focus of next year, given our pace. So next. All right. And so Sam and I sort of breezed through these in what we talked about, but this is the bulk of stuff that you're going to see coming to your inboxes before our next meeting. So we're going to be sending to you a draft of the nutrient water quality monitoring programs inventory. Again, we're really going to be looking to sort of take that same style as what was included in the anticipated impacts watch list, try to keep a as simple as possible of a narrative, and then try to chart out or use tables to express as much as possible. Just keep it very easy, as well as easy to update as this group continues its iterative work. So we'll do that for both nutrients and other abiotic water quality monitoring. We'll get a draft out on the biological and ecological monitoring programs, although there may be some more data that needs to be collected there before we're ready to move forward. We will look to get comments and direction from this team on those early draft recommendations. And then we are going to get some thoughts out on what PDT, and maybe it's not even fair to call it PDT. Maybe we should just call it project engagement procedures, to Gina's point, going forward, for how this team should be briefed on all of these projects that are going on by team members, and then also how we can speak kind of collectively in the planning processes when there are interests of these agencies with respect to the reef involved. So be looking for all of that. It's coming. Next slide.
That might be the last slide.
Great. Any questions? Now we'll take questions and or comments from the team. Okay. And so we are at 3:30. We're going to go ahead and move over to public comments. OERI staff are going to handle all the muting and unmuting. And so I would encourage anyone from the public to go ahead and use the raise your hand feature. We're going to keep remarks, given that we're already over time, to 2 minutes in length. And then Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you to facilitate the discussion.
Perfect. So anyone here as an attendee, if you'd like to give a public comment, please raise your hand at this time. Mark Perry.
Yeah, thank you for taking a question. I know we're out of time right now, but it's been great listening in and making sure we understand where we are with a lot of the reef things. I appreciate the LOSUM update too. In particular case for that, recognizing here at the St. Lucie Inlet, we're exposing the north end of the Florida Reef Tract to those discharges, which have now minimized due to LOSUM, and hopefully be aware of that. But those salinity conditions can still change dramatically due to local basin runoff. Since September through right now, we've had over 4,000 to 5,000 CFS coming into the St. Lucie estuary, and of course flowing out to the nearshore reefs, impacting those, and those salinities have dropped down to, our monitoring shows, around 23.5, 20.0, and 27 parts per thousand in the last 3-week period. So we're concerned that if it drops, below that 20 range, and particularly going up into the spawning season of corals in March through October, it was during that time, but if it drops below 30 the rest of the year, then we're jeopardizing the coral reef tract. The other comment I just want to make too is that not to forget that the hard bottom habitat north of the St. Lucie Inlet, namely a sabularid worm reef, is also included in the definition of coral reef under Chapter 403. So the coral reef tract actually extends in that period, and both the South Reef, St. Lucie Inlet State Preserve Reef, south of the inlet 4.7 miles, and the 1.5 miles north have been nominated for National Marine Sanctuary back in 1982, and I recall working with John Reed and others, and John House and Walt Chaplin, putting those on. So they're significant reefs, and just wanting to point out that basin runoff and other runoff is also a concern for us up here in the northern reef tract, along with the salinity drops is also the turbidity. Thanks for all your considerations and keeping going with our trying to get resilience built into our reef tracts. And thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mark. Joe Boyer?
Yeah, quick one. As an outsider, it's hard for us to find some of the documents that are referenced in the presentations, like McEachran 2022, the Double Dare 2024 document. It'd be nice to have a place, a repository of some of the documents. Thank you.
Any other comments? Don't see any other hands. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Wes for final remarks.
Thank you very much. Great meeting today. We're going to get back on our feet in all ways, in every shape and in every form. Go ahead and get ready to pencil in a January date for a little bit of a longer meeting, so we can get through the backlog from this year and start next year on the right foot. There's a lot to do, and I have no doubt with the addition of Sam and Alessandra that we're going to be really poised to help accomplish that. So that's very exciting. And then just as a comment to Mr. Boyer, a lot of the documents are available on the EvergladesRestoration.gov /FCRCT. But perhaps, I'm not sure exactly if those are just laid out in sort of calendar order from when meetings are happening. So it may not be as simple as just a one-stop like folder for everything. But obviously you are welcome to reach out to us, and we can try to help clarify where some of those things are as well. So Vice Chair, any other remarks?
No, I think they've probably heard my voice enough today.
All right. Well, I'm sure everybody's
very
sick of
much.
mine. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend and a great holiday season before we get back in touch with everybody in January. Thank you.